right, friends, happy summer and welcome back to Beyond Ag Ed. It has been a hot second since Cory and I have gotten to just kind of like do our thing and hash into some topics and have a little conversation. So that's what we're going to do in this session. And if you missed it, if you weren't on social media in the last couple of weeks, then you don't know that we actually got to do this live and in person at the California Ag Teachers Association Summer Conference in San Luis Obispo. So this morning, you know, it just seems like it would be kind of pertinent to share our takeaways, right? Like that bird's eye view. We're going to share with you guys our takeaways from summer conference. And then just for kicks and giggles, we're choosing one of the topics that came out of that session, reported directly from the mouths of current ag teachers themselves. We're going to take that topic and we're going to break it down. We're going to pour some awesome sauce on it. And then we're going to project it through the lens of authenticity and honesty, and hopefully give you guys, again, some tangible tools that you can start applying today to just, I don't know, actually do something about all the stuff that we talk about. So Cory, a couple of weeks ago, you and I finally got to be like face-to-face in person, not just on a screen. Share with our lovely viewers, what would you say was your biggest takeaway after our session? You walk out of the room. What was that thing that stuck with you the most?
Well, to kickstart and kind of backtrack to the beginning of our workshop, it was interesting to see the type of people that actually showed up to this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the people that know you well and support you and wanted to be there and hear what you had to say live and probably just see you. And I had a few of those people there for myself.
Yeah.
And then we had kind of a hodgepodge of people there, it seemed. Some younger ag teachers, some older, more experienced ag teachers. Some I think were there just to like maybe check a box. I don't know. Just I needed a session and this one looked whatever. Some of them I think wanted to hear what we had to say in person. And some of them I think maybe were trying to catch us slipping. I don't know. It was hard to read the room, right? But in the grand scheme of it, and to kind of bring it all into summation, I think the biggest takeaway was the fact that you look at the list of different workshops and there's always a bunch of professional development led by some of the masters in their area, which is super cool on a professional side. But here we are, we're having this personal conversation. We're bringing all of these different people from different walks of life all to the same table and igniting these conversations. And one of the comments that stuck out to me, which we talked about before we pushed record here, was these conversations happen and then they just kind of fizzle out. They go away. Nobody's actually reinforcing them or kind of like, hey, no, we need to have this conversation and come to a resolution. It's just like, well, this is a problem we have. Okay, cool. Moving on. It's like, that's you're never going to find solutions that way. And so bringing a group of people, again, from all different walks of life, different schools, different levels of experience, just all different situations, and bringing them into the same room and hearing them out and allowing them to, or them having the freaking balls to speak in front of a group of people they don't know and share their experiences. I think that was super impactful. And maybe this is me tooting our horn, but I really feel like everybody who attended that conference, that workshop, whether they thought they were going to get something out of it or were just there just to be there, I think they all left with a new perspective, honestly. And I feel like it was extremely beneficial for not only just them, but for us, because it enlightened us to a whole new realm of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And going into it, I was hopeful that there would just be fruitful conversation. I wanted it to be productive. And I was hopeful that selfishly, we were going to get some content, right? We were going to get some content, some ideas for like future episodes for the channel. And maybe, you know, kind of find a couple new guests that might come on here soon. And that very much did happen. What I was pleasantly surprised by, because I don't know that we could have, even though we set the context and kind of laid out this roadmap before the workshop started, I don't think we could have asked them to do what they wound up doing, which was have that honest conversation. The way that those attendees showed up, the transparency that was shared, the honesty that was shared about each of their very unique experiences. I wasn't quite expecting where they were willing to go in the conversation, and so that was really refreshing. And specifically, something that stood out to me earlier on, as I'm starting to like write down all of these different ideas and, oh, okay, here's our challenges and here's where we want to grow, and doing all the things on the board. I forget who it was, but someone spoke up and said, basically kind of framed it as a question, but like, why they were asking kind of like why there had to be this like us versus them scenario, as it relates to like young or student teachers versus 20-year veterans, right? Male versus female, you know, married versus single. Like there's all of these different kind of demographical, you know, labels that we tend to put on people. And to no fault of our own, right? Like ag teachers, hello, it's embedded in agri-science, it's embedded in how we teach, you know, our kids in the classroom. And I think we're just kind of bred from this greater profession that does want things to be quantifiable, because if we're not measuring what we're doing, if we're not measuring what's working, like we can't make changes. But at the same time, for years now, we've been having the same conversations, putting the same labels on everybody. And what it's kind of, I think, maybe worsened or kind of put a magnifying glass over is that us versus them mentality. And when a profession is kind of on the precipice of needing to go through its next evolution, its next phase of growth, if you're pitting yourself against each other, it's like you're kind of setting the stage for, you know, not to be too extreme, but like internal civil wars or civil battles with each other. And it's the same people that you're needing to like link arms with to take the thing right to where it needs to go. So I just thought that was really interesting. And the fact that it came from a quote unquote younger educator, that like, I'm not against anybody that's been here longer than me, you know, and maybe being willing to start navigating the conversation away from that as the starting point. I just thought that was really interesting.
Well, and we talked about this live there, but you know, there's this, and somebody that was attending brought it up. I'm not going to take credit for it, but they were like, "Why do we even have this divide between the more experienced ag teachers and the younger ag teachers?" And just from what I've heard, and when I was still teaching, what seemed to kind of be my perception of it was, you know, the younger ag teachers need to shut up and listen, and from the younger teacher standpoint, it's the older teachers won't listen to me. So why even talk, right? And it's interesting because it's the same issue, just in reverse order. I think, and we talked about this, you know, a younger ag teacher, especially now, like I'm 34 years old. I was 27, 26, 27, I think, when I started teaching. I was a late bloomer. And but I still was kind of in tune with the 17, 18-year-old student. I kind of had an understanding of the way they thought, because I kind of, when I was in high school, I caught the tail end of that everybody gets a trophy bullshit. So I had an idea of what they were experiencing and the mentality that they had going into situations. So I was able to relate to it and find ways to actually use it to my advantage as a teacher and get a point across, right? The teachers that have been in this profession for 15, 20, 25 years, you know, they've seen all different kinds of students at this point, and they've seen what some would probably call the regression of students, because there's no accountability for high school students anymore, unless the teacher in that classroom is holding them accountable. But if the district doesn't have their back, then that's a totally different story, right? The point I'm making is the younger teachers have the benefit of not being that far removed from the high school classroom. So they can relate more so to the type of student that everybody's dealing with at this point, where a more experienced veteran teacher isn't going to have that. They're trying to figure out how to navigate this new type of student. On the flip side, that more experienced veteran teacher has seen a lot of shit. They've seen pretty much, depending on how long they've been teaching, they've probably seen it all at this point. And
Uh-huh.
so the younger teachers need to be asking questions. They
Right.
need to be trying to find the mentor in that teacher, and together collaboratively they can work together and create something really special. And that, I think, was kind of one of the big takeaways from what we were hearing, is that that's not, I mean, is it happening? Yes, but it's probably not happening as much as it should be. And there's people that would bolt on both ends that would benefit, including the organization as a whole would
Yeah.
benefit from that.
Yeah. And I thought too, as the conversation was unfolding, it also became really clear. And I think it was helpful for the attendees that were there to realize, just kind of in a very in front of your face kind of way, multiple things can be true at the same time, right? And again, this goes against like how we approach, I think, education, definitely how we approach teaching science, where there's supposed to be these absolute black and white truths. And there's a certain way that you go about, changing one variable at a time in agri-science, right? So that you can make sure you have a reliable, right, and kind of reputable testing. But when it comes to the human experience, it's not so black and white. To the point where I recall like our group that was kind of dead in front of us, as they're talking about just that feeling of maybe not being heard, trying different ways to participate, to engage, to contribute. But then at the end of the day, still really not feeling heard or valued. And then I remember my friend and one of my mentors, Marlene, speaking up and saying, hey, there's some of us that have been around the block like a time or two, times 10, okay, that are more than willing, are craving the opportunity to get to connect with younger professionals, get to mentor younger professionals, and yet haven't been given the opportunity in a more official capacity, like with having student teachers and that type of thing. And I just, the reason why I appreciated it so much is that, like, again, there are multiple truths that can happen at the same time. You might be in I don't know, I'm just going to make up some names, right? The Colorado Hills section. Okay. You might be in that section and experiencing some veteran teachers that are like, it's this way or the highway. This is what's always worked. We're not changing. You might have that experience wherever it is that you're from. But then we've got some people over here that are saying, hey, I've been around twice as long as, those jerkholes that are giving you a hard time. And that's not me. That's not us. Don't put me in that same category. And we could say the same thing about a newer professional, right? We've got some people that come out, no matter how old or young, no matter what their personal or professional backgrounds prior to ag education might have been, there's some people that come out into the profession all guns blazing, like ready to go. And they just have maybe some, I don't know, for lack of a better word, but natural talents and abilities that are maybe their starting point is just higher or farther along than somebody else in their same age that hasn't had similar experiences. It can all be true at the same time. We can have some people in one part of the state that are having XYZ problem. There's people in another part of the state that aren't having that problem. They have this other thing. And it doesn't mean that any one person's right or wrong. Like, and I know this is going to really tick some people off, but like, because it's been used a little too much. But when you talk about like your truth, right? Well, there's just the truth. Like there's just one thing that is inherently right or wrong. But the problem is, like, we are human beings. And when you bring into it your personal experiences, backgrounds, prior experiences, sometimes with even people throughout the profession, it changes the lenses that you're looking through, new opportunities, new challenges, right? New ways to move forward. And so I just think it's helpful to maybe remind ourselves that if someone is speaking up and saying that they feel a certain way, if someone's saying that, hey, I really think there's a better way for us to approach whatever the problem is that we're talking about, or I had this experience when I was a student teacher and it made me feel this way, and it's why I'm now behaving this way as a teacher. We have to listen to what people are saying. That really was their experience. You might disagree with it. You might think it's wrong or that shouldn't have happened, but it did happen to them. And it's now changing the way that they show up later in their career. So we have to be, if nothing else, we just have to be able to accept someone else's story. If you don't want to call it the truth, someone else's experience, someone else's story. If we could start there, oh my God, the conversation that could happen, I think would be night and day from maybe what people are used to right now.
Well, I think like a good example that I have in relation to kind of the older versus younger. So the small engines contest, when I was coaching a small engines team, there were I was up for revision one of the summer conferences, and there was some proposals made to just change the contest around, especially the troubleshooting end of things. And there was a group of more experienced teachers that were just gamers. Like they were great coaches, had won or been very close, or were super competitive every year for winning a state title. And the proposals made were just to kind of make some adjustments, and they weren't bad proposals. I mean, I was still kind of new, so from my standpoint, it was time to shut up and listen and see, what both sides had to say. And so the proposal seemed good to me, but the older, more experienced teachers were able to explain why those didn't work because they had tried them before and it failed miserably. Not saying that you can't try it again,
Sure.
but they had the experience and they were able to articulate that to the younger teachers. And it's like, look, we've done this before and I see what you're saying. It just doesn't work. And here's why. And so being able to have that conversation, but be having the ability to portray that information and explain that to a younger teacher, like, look, I know you have great ideas, but right now, just watch, observe, see how these things are working. And then from there, we can have these conversations. And as you see things, feel free to speak up. I mean,
right.
In my current job, being a service manager, I have 7 technicians underneath me, and an 8th guy that works for me as well. And I'm like, look, straight up, when I hire a new guy, if you see something that you think will work better, tell me. Let's have a conversation. I may tell you no, or I may say, you know what, that's a good idea. Let's try it. But you're in charge. Like you're going to be the one that takes the reins on this. But being able to at least be open-minded to other people's ideas, like nobody in the world has time for everybody's ideas, but to be able to take a younger teacher under your wing as a more experienced teacher and say, hey, look, we've tried these things before. They might work, they might not work, or we've never tried that. You know what? That's a great idea. Let's see how it works. Those type of situations, I think, are not happening as frequently as they should, and it's creating tension from both ends. And it seems to be, at least from the outside perspective, the us versus them mentality.
Yeah. And two, like just because one of your ideas or your first suggestion you put out there gets shot down, okay, that doesn't mean you be quiet forever. It just means for whatever reasons, like you just explained, there could be some really concrete reasons why something might not work. And we've already got proof and evidence that it's not going to be the thing that helps us in the way that we want it to. Cool. Okay. So take note, bring that knowledge with you to the next situation. And the next time you have an idea, share that new idea, right? Like just because you get shot down once doesn't mean that you have to internalize it. Like I'm never supposed to speak up, or see, like, this is why I shouldn't have said anything. They're not going to listen to me. They're listening to you. But in this case, like there's a very specific reason why it's not going to happen. When we think about these types of issues, my problem, or something that I've experienced previously, and from my perspective, I still see happening a little bit, is that there's no real good place. Like, where is it you go? Like, where do you go when it's not a change to a contest, when there's a bigger overarching issue, challenge, topic that you want talked about or that you would like to see change brought to? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? Do you know?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Oh,
asking you, and I'm asking the viewers that are hopefully going to watch this. You know what I'm saying?
I
If you really think about it, the majority of people in this profession have no idea or understanding where to go, who to talk to, what process to follow to, in a more official capacity, have their voice be heard. And when I make that statement, I know that the follow-up from some people is going to be, well, it should start in your section. Okay, let's really get honest. Some of our sections are more combative and more toxic than higher up, quote unquote, the food chain in the profession, right? Like it might be easier for someone to pick up the phone and call their regional supervisor than it would be to have a fruitful conversation at the sectional level. And then vice versa for other people. It might be more productive to start at the sectional level, have some type of, cohesive agreement or measure that gets brought forward. You go through the chain, regional, state, whatever. Most educators don't have a really strong understanding about the structure of CATA. And even when and if you do, because I had the opportunity to participate in different levels of leadership, even then, even when you're behind the closed doors, again, I'm just really ripping Band-Aids off today. Even when you're behind those closed doors, there is still some unspoken, I don't know, rules, or there are still some people that are more highly regarded when they speak than other people. And that's just the fact of the matter. And there continue to be like behind closed door conversations. And I think it gets really difficult if you're someone who's experiencing a challenge or has had a negative experience during their time in the profession thus far. If you only ever see the same people or the same groups of people being listened to or being congratulated or being validated for their experience, and it's never someone who's speaking about the experience you've had, or it's never someone that looks like you, representation matters. And then those feelings of being unheard, of being unseen, they harbor and they fester until eventually that person decides to either A, drop a nuke in a like big meeting, or B, leave the profession and do something else, And again, it doesn't mean that these are like bad, awful people. I don't think that at all. I just know from personal experience that not all systems, not all structures are created equally. They don't always remain effective for the duration of how long they've existed. And sometimes we need a little bit of a refresh. Like I've talked to you about this before. There's no freaking HR in CATA. Like, where do you go when someone's like, doing some shady ish? Where do you go? Or if someone's dropping the hammer, like top down, right? Like say state staff decides that like, so-and-so did XYZ and now like they need to be punished, right? But then someone who does something very similar, maybe from a different section or a different region, but is held in a different esteem, they're not held to the fire in the same way. It just matters. It matters to have places where all voices and all people can be seen, validated, and heard. And I just don't think it exists yet.
well, there's always in every situation, organization, workplace, whatever, there's a hierarchy established. And
Yeah.
how that hierarchy is established, I think it's just more primitive than anything. I don't think that there's any type of, I don't know, like method to it really. Maybe there is. Maybe some people are smart enough to figure out how to do that. But there's some of the people who are able to be those voices. They have an opportunity here to really kind of put this shit to bed. and make those adjustments that we're talking about, have those conversations, because they're already held in high regard. You know, some of the people I think that would prefer to be held in high regard and maybe aren't, those are the ones that are pissed because they're getting their dirty laundry aired out and it's making them angry. And I think it's kind of funny, to be honest, because we're not fucking going anywhere. So sorry. But the point I'm trying to make is those voices that have the platform and that have, you know, or have the notoriety for whatever reason, this is your golden opportunity to be the hero that you can be and bring this shit to the table and get these conversations started. Because the fact of the matter is, you know, Colleen and I had to try to be able to speak at summer conference. And I'm sure I know there was some people that did not want us there. Again, going back to what I just said. So we're not going to be at every regional meeting to start these conversations. We're not going to be, you know, there to kind of help with these unless you're tuning into this, which you should be at this point. But the point is it's time. It's time to make those adjustments and take this organization that, again, Colleen and I hold both of us hold near and dear to our heart and love and have a lot of compassion for. Dude, some of our best friends are still teachers and we want what's best for them. And the opportunity is now. Because at this point, nothing has fucking happened. Nothing has fucking changed other than just different rules that get implemented and different people in different positions. So what? What are you doing? How are you changing things? If you want to be a big dog, step the fuck up and do something about it. That's the part that drives me the most insane. Like, people want the leadership role or title, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with doing the difficult things. And I struggle with this as well. But at some point, you have to have that conversation with yourself and say, dude, this has to get done. Like, it is time. This is my opportunity. I can do this. And once you make that decision to do that, it changes your entire life. And it changes the lives of everybody around you.
Exactly. And to that end also, for the people that are listening, for the people that we've had conversations with at summer conference and in between, for anyone that feels miserable or stuck or unseen or unheard, just like center yourself in that feeling for a second. And then imagine yourself actually speaking up and actually like trying to bring to fruition a change. It will never be more uncomfortable than you already feel right now. So what are you waiting for? You're already miserable. You're already stressed out. You're already burning the candle at both ends, right? And for the number of people that were in that room in our workshop that we kept having a similar question worded different ways, but it basically came to, well, how do you do that? How do you speak up? Or how do you get your voice heard? And it just reminds me of something I heard before, and it's so ridiculous and I hate that it's from the show. I remember hearing Dr. Phil a long time ago. He was like talking to somebody through some kind of drama. Okay. Don't judge me. I watch really bad TV sometimes when I'm stressed out. But he said, and it was a very similarly phrased question from whoever his guest was on his show. But they asked him, well, how do I know when I've made it? Or how do I know when I'm done doing XYZ? And he says, unless and until. So how do you know how to speak up, or how do you know when to do this, that, and the other and make a new decision? Unless and until. So you keep trying, you keep showing up, you keep having conversations, you keep raising your hand, putting your name into the minutes, asking for the permission or whatever, but you keep doing the thing unless and until you get the desired result. So if nobody's listening to you, talk more. If nobody's listening to you, talk louder. If nobody's listening to you, ask for help from someone that you think this other party will value, validate, and listen to so that they can elevate your voice. But you have to do something. Sitting back, doing nothing, and like you said, coming to our workshop or even like watching our episodes here on the channel, and please keep doing that. Invite your friends. But that's not enough. We're going to build you up as much as we can behind the scenes for sure. But at some point in time, it has to be you. And then imagine this. What if instead of these individuals that have ideas and solutions or needs that they want to have addressed, instead of it being individuals, if y'all would raise your voice at the same time, okay, you could drown out these individual voices in positions of power. You would be the ones driving the bus of change. You can do that, but you've all been convinced for so long that you don't matter as much, or you don't know enough, or you haven't been teaching long enough, that it's not your turn yet. It's your turn as soon as you claim it. Claim your turn and let's go right now. And I think that brings us to like the resounding, and we talked about this before we press record too, that part of the issue, and this came directly from the mouths of the people in the workshop, that the discussion needs to manifest, right? The discussion needs to turn into something. What's the action, right? And something that I utilize on my coaching team are just like guiding questions, but ask yourself, what's next? What needs to come after this conversation? Or maybe the conversation hasn't happened yet and that's like your first thing. But in terms of the profession, who's leading? Who's the leader, or who are the leaders that are kind of bringing us to wherever it is that we're meant to go, right? That like proverbial like water trough. Where are we going? And maybe the profession knows, like you and I aren't in it. So like maybe they've got all these internal secrets that they're talking about and they have all the clarity in the world. I don't think so. Right? Where are you going? Who's leading? And then you've got to be able to let go of this idea that like, we can't change because people don't agree yet. If you wait until everybody in this profession agrees as to what the very next step needs to be, no wonder I've been out of the classroom now not quite 3.5 years, right? Still having a lot of the same conversations, people. Something has to change. And it's got to be some of the people listening to this channel that are going to be the ones to turn the conversation in a different direction and take some ever-loving action, like for the love.
One of the conversations that was brought up when we were doing that workshop was by a younger teacher who asked a question, and I kind of took it two ways. One of them was, I guess the main question was there's teachers in the profession that need to hear this message. They need to be a part of these conversations, and they're not watching your channel because, I don't know, they don't like what we're doing or whatever that looks like for them. Doesn't matter. How do you hold their feet to the fire? And my answer was, and I feel strongly about this in a lot of situations, but to kind of go back and touch on what you were just talking about, if your voice isn't being heard, if you're not getting your point across, the first thing you need to do is you need to look within. The people that don't want to hear this message, the people that are stuck in that fixed mindset, because we talked a lot about growth mindset. Thank you, Jennifer. They're stuck in that fixed mindset. They will not look in the fucking mirror and see who they are. They don't want to see who they are because they don't want to be any different. It's too scary to be any different. So instead, they'd rather sit back and judge, right? When you look within, those conversations, again, let's go way back between the more experienced teachers and the younger teachers, the newer teachers. A new teacher, I'm asking you, well, my master's teacher won't listen to me. He won't, take any of my opinions to heart. He won't try anything that I say. Like, they won't listen to my suggestions. They just talk over me. Are you listening to them? Are you talking over them? What could you do better? Because maybe that is the situation. At the end of the day, maybe that is. And maybe they're just being assholes. But maybe you're coming off in a bad manner as well. Maybe you're being abrasive and you don't realize it. So the first thing you can do is look within. And that's what this is all about, is starting to look within. Who are you? What can you do better? You might not be able to change your department. You might not be able to change this organization or this profession or any of these things around you. But you know what you do have control over? Your classroom. You have control over your thoughts. You have control over the impact that you leave with your students. Like, my goal as a person, both when I was a teacher and now, and this is kind of a hard goal to, I guess, it's not more of a goal, it's more of a mission than anything, I suppose. But it is to make sure that everybody who deals with me leaves that dealing with me, leaves that interaction with me a better person. They got something from me, whether it was a conversation or they saw me take action, pick up trash on the floor, whatever the fuck it was. When they leave, they're a better person because they knew me, because they got the opportunity to deal with me. And that was from me looking within and saying, okay, who do I want to be? What example do I want to set? And again, there's people not only in this profession, but all around us, probably the majority of people who don't want to look in the mirror. They don't, because it's too hard. It's too difficult. It hurts to identify with who you really are. So instead, they just project all that shit out onto you and everybody else. So the best thing you can do is focus on you and look internally. And if you have done everything, and you know damn well in your gut you've done everything you can to make this issue or solve this issue with this other person or department or whatever it is, then at that point you have to make a different decision. But that was the key that I feel like a lot of people are struggling with that.
Yeah.
And you could sense, especially with younger teachers, it was more prevalent because it almost feels like they're kind of fighting a losing battle, at least to them. And I get where they're coming from, but I think they need to look within too. I think they need to have those conversations with themselves before having those conversations with others. And that goes for all of us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. So here we are, kind of the last few minutes of another episode. What would be your either biggest takeaway or suggestion for an action that someone could take in this next week, based on what we've been talking about, these hard conversations, maybe something people could do that would help them shift from discussion mode into action mode? What's something that you do that you find helps you kind of stay in that action taking mode?
Again, it's summertime, so I'm just going to repeat what I just said in a abbreviated version. Look within. You need to look inside your soul and see what the fuck's going on in there. And then those conversations that have been difficult to have with people, or the actions that you've thought about taking and haven't taken, what better time than now? Like, you have this time, a little bit of time, at least for some, to reflect. So going back into this next school year, how are you preparing mentally, on your personal development side, like professionally? What are you doing to gear yourself up? Because the storm's coming and you're excited, but you're also nervous because there's these overlying issues, which Colleen and I are trying to bring on the table and bring to the table and get hashed out, right? But start looking within and see if you can start supplying yourself with the tools that you're going to need to be successful this year. And if you're not doing that, then you're letting yourself down and you're letting everybody around you down, and especially your students.
Yeah. For me, I mean, first and foremost, I think as soon as I kind of just accepted and figured out in my own way, that, you know, our brains are kind of hardwired to work against us. We are hardwired to keep ourselves safe, and being safe usually means we're staying in our comfort zone, right? But with the topics that we talk about here on this channel, with the challenges facing ag teachers throughout the profession, staying in your comfort zone does you a greater disservice than whatever hard conversations need to happen. So first, realizing your brain is hardwired to keep you safe. But by staying safe, you're limiting yourself from expanding into a more highly effective person, a more high performing person, the version of yourself that will command, and not in an egotistical way, but will command attention and will, I think, command and model the type of respect and validation you're wanting from others. Doing that first, as you said, right? Looking inward and then modeling what it is that you expect other people. If you want them to meet you where you're at in a certain kind of way, you got to do it first. You have to be the one that does it first. You've got to embody and model those expectations, just like we do for our students in the classroom. You've got to show up in the way that you want people to see you, perceive you, and show up and meet you in the same way. And I think too, just spending that time, as you said, in reflection over the summer, whether that means journaling, whether that means, having these types of conversations with other ag teachers that you do have the camaraderie or that relationship with, someone who can validate what you're experiencing, but also push you that one step outside your comfort zone, I think would be tremendously helpful. And just kind of a final takeaway. We did this in the workshop, but I want to share it with whoever it is that's going to watch this episode on our channel. But if you were to look at both your hands, right and left, right? The exercise is that in your right hand, you put everything that is good and positive and brings you joy and makes you happy and all the rah, rah, frou, frou, my life is amazing stuff that goes in your right hand. You're going to hold it, feel the weight, keep it there, don't drop them, right? In your left hand, you're going to visually put in all the things that are challenging, hard, negative, stressful, bringing you anxiety, all the SHIT, the things that like, oh, I hate this. It's so stressful. Oh my God, this is everything that's wrong with the profession. If we could just fix all these things. Oh. And when you're focused on all the negative in the left hand, you forget about all the good that you already have. You forget about the opportunity to connect with other ag teachers. You forget that there are other professionals throughout the association that if they only knew the help that you wanted or needed, they would already be there ready to show up for you in spades. So again, to the haters of the channel, this is not a bashing on ag education. This is an invitation and a calling for you all to rise up, to link arms together so that you can redefine the standard. And that is going beyond ag education.